The forge bellows wheezed like an old dog, and Drummond pumped the handle 3 more times before the coals glowed bright enough to work the horseshoe waiting on her anvil. She had learned years ago to position herself so the limp barely showed while she worked, her stronger left leg bearing most of her weight, her right foot barely touching the ground except when absolutely necessary. The trick was to move deliberately, to make each step look purposeful rather than pained, though by evening her hip would ache deep in the joint where the bone had healed crooked after the cart accident that had crushed it when she was 7. The shoe she was shaping belonged to a dappled mare from the coach house, and Kara brought her hammer down in steady, practiced strikes, each blow sending sparks scattering across the packed dirt floor. Master Torvin had gone to the market 2 villages over, leaving her alone in the forge for the afternoon, which suited her just fine. Alone, she did not have to pretend the limp was negligible. Alone, she could rest when she needed to without seeing pity flicker across someone's face. She plunged the finished shoe into the water barrel, and steam hissed up in a cloud. Through the vapor, she saw a man leading a tall bay gelding toward the forge, and she recognized him immediately. Everyone in Milford Crossing knew Adam Marsh, the coachmaster who ran the northern route between here and the mountain passes. He was perhaps 35, broad-shouldered and weathered, with brown hair going gray at the temples and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile somewhere around the time his wife died 3 years back. He dressed plainly, always in dark wool and leather, and he spoke even more sparingly than most men. "Afternoon," Kara called, fishing the cooled shoe from the barrel and setting it on her work table. "What can I do for you?" Adam stopped just inside the forge's shade, the gelding's reins loose in his hand. "Near hind is loose. Thought I would have it seen to before the afternoon run." Kara nodded and wiped her hands on her leather apron. She had rishad this same horse only 6 weeks ago, which seemed early for a shoe to work loose, but she was not about to turn away paying work. She limped over to where Adam stood, and she saw his eyes flick down to her uneven gait for just a moment before returning to her face. Most people stared longer. Some looked away entirely, as though the sight of her disability embarrassed them. "Let me have a look," she said, and Adam handed her the reins without comment. She ran her hand down the gelding's flank, speaking softly to the animal as she moved to its hindquarters. The horse was well-mannered and lifted its hoof as soon as she tapped the back of its leg. The shoe was indeed loose. 2 of the nails nearly worked free, but the hoof itself looked healthy. She lowered the leg gently and straightened, ignoring the twinge in her hip. "I can have it fixed in 20 minutes, she said. "Might need a fresh shoe depending on how the old one comes off." "Fair enough." Adam led the gelding to the hitching post and tied it there, then leaned against the post with his arms crossed, apparently intending to wait. Kara was used to customers who wandered off to the tavern or the market while she worked, but she was equally used to those who stayed to watch. She fetched her tools and got to work, prying the loose nails free and examining the old shoe. It could be reused, which would save Adam a few coins. She built up the fire again, heated the shoe until it was malleable, and made the small adjustments needed to ensure a perfect fit. The whole time, Adam watched in silence. It should have made her nervous, but his attention felt different from the usual scrutiny. He was not staring at her limp, or at the way she had to brace herself against the anvil when her right leg gave a particularly sharp throb. He was simply watching her work the way someone might watch a weaver at a loom or a potter at a wheel. When she finished and stepped back to let the gelding test its weight on the new shoe, Adam pushed off from the post and came over. He ran his own hand down the horse's leg, checked the hoof, and nodded once. "Good work," he said, and handed her the payment without haggling. "Thank you." She pocketed the coins and watched as he untied the gelding and swung up into the saddle with the easy grace of a man who had spent most of his life on horseback or on a coach box. He touched the brim of his hat to her and rode off toward the coach house without another word. Kara returned to her anvil and the day's other work, putting the encounter out of her mind. Adam Marsh was a good customer, nothing more, and she was a farrier's apprentice with 3 years left on her contract before she could call herself a master. Romance, love, courtship, all of that belonged to girls who walked without limping, who could dance at the harvest festival or stroll through the market without wincing. It belonged to girls like Rosalind, the innkeeper's daughter, who had golden hair and a laugh like bells and who collected suitors the way some people collected wildflowers. It did not belong to Kara, and she had made her peace with that years ago. 3 days later, Adam returned with a different horse, this one complaining of a cracked hoof that needed trimming and treating. Kara took care of it while Master Torvin haggled with a farmer over a set of gate hinges. A week after that, Adam brought 2 of his coach horses in for routine shoeing, though Kara could have sworn they had been shod recently. She said nothing, just did the work and took the payment. By the time autumn began to paint the trees gold and crimson, Adam Marsh had become the forge's most frequent customer. He always had a reason, some legitimate issue with a horse or a piece of tack that needed mending, but the visits came so regularly that even Master Torvin commented on it. "That coach master must be the most careful horse keeper in 3 counties," the old orc said one evening as they were banking the fires. Torvin was gray-skinned and stooped with age, his tusks yellowed and worn down, but his eyes were still sharp. "Or else he is finding excuses." Kara looked up from the tool she was oiling. Excuses for what? Torvin gave her a look that suggested he thought she was being deliberately dense. "To visit the forge, girl, and unless I have gone completely blind he hardly speaks to me at all. It is you he comes to see." The suggestion was so absurd that Kara nearly laughed. "He is a customer with high standards, that is all. Torvin did not sound convinced, but he let the matter drop. Kara told herself the old orc was imagining things. Adam Marsh was a widower, a human man with property and a respected position in the community. If he ever chose to court again, it would be someone like Rosalind or the widow Miller who ran the dry goods store, someone human and whole and graceful. Not an orc girl who could barely walk across the forge without pain, whose hands were scarred from 100 small burns, whose tusks marked her as something other even before anyone noticed the limp. But as the weeks passed, she began to notice things. The way Adam always arrived when Master Torvin was likely to be busy elsewhere. The way he lingered after his business was concluded, commenting on the weather or asking after her opinion on the state of the roads. The way he sometimes brought small things, an apple for her lunch, a packet of the good tea from the merchant's caravan, once a pair of leather gloves that fit her hands perfectly. "For the work," he always said, his voice gruff. "No more than that." Kara accepted the gifts because refusing them would have been rude, but she kept her heart carefully locked away. She had spent too many years watching other girls receive flowers and ribbons, too many evenings sitting out the dances because no one asked and she could not have danced anyway, to let herself hope now. Adam was kind, that was all. He probably felt sorry for her, or perhaps he simply appreciated good craftsmanship and wanted to encourage it. She was content with that. She had her work, her skill with metal and fire, the satisfaction of a job done well. It was enough. Winter came hard that year, snow piling deep in the mountain passes and turning the coach roads to frozen mud. Adam's northern route became treacherous, and twice He came to the forge with horses that had thrown shoes on the icy roads. Both times, Kara worked as quickly as she could to get him back on schedule, her fingers numb despite the fire's heat. The second time, Adam watched her work in his usual silence, but when she finished and straightened, he spoke. "You should have a chair," he said, "for when you work. Something to take the weight off." Kara froze. No one ever mentioned her leg directly. They might stare or whisper or look away, but they did not offer solutions as though her pain was a problem that could be solved. "I manage fine," she said, and heard the defensive edge in her own voice. "I did not say you did not manage." Adam's tone was even matter-of-fact. "I said you should have a chair." He left before she could formulate a response, and she stood in the forge feeling off balance as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. 2 days later, a sturdy wooden stool appeared in the forge, high enough that she could sit at her work table and still reach the anvil comfortably. It had a leather cushion on the seat and a footrest at just the right height for her shorter leg. Master Torvin raised his eyebrows when he saw it. Present from the coachmaster, Kara ran her fingers over the smooth wood. It was well made, crafted by someone who understood both joinery and the specific needs of a farrier's workspace. "I suppose it must be." "And what do you intend to do about that?" "Use it," Kara said. "It would be wasteful not to." Torvin made a noise that might have been a laugh or a snort. "You are determined not to see what is right in front of you, are you not?" "I see a man who wants his horses well cared for and knows that a farrier who is not exhausted does better work." "Stubborn," Torvin muttered, but he was smiling. "Just like your mother, stars rest her." Kara's mother had died in the same accident that crushed her leg, thrown from the cart when the wheel broke on the mountain road. Her father had followed 2 years later, his heart simply giving out one night as though it could not bear the world without his wife in it. Master Torvin had taken Kara on as an apprentice when she was 12, giving her a trade and a future when most orc girls in her position would have ended up begging or doing laundry for pennies. She used the stool, and found that by the end of the day her hip ached less. She did not thank Adam the next time he came to the forge, because she did not know what to say that would not reveal the confusing tangle of feelings in her chest, but she met his eyes and nodded once. He nodded back, and something passed between them that felt like understanding. Spring came slowly, the snow retreating inch by inch up the mountainsides. The roads turned to thick mud, and the coaches bogged down regularly. Adam came to the forge almost weekly now, and Kara found herself listening for the sound of hoofbeats, looking up expectantly whenever someone approached. She was falling in love with him. The realization crept up on her gradually, like dawn light spreading across the sky, until one morning she woke up and simply knew. She loved the way he spoke to his horses, gentle and patient. She loved his quiet competence, the way he could look at a broken harness or a lame horse and immediately know what needed to be done. She loved that he had never once treated her disability as something shameful or pitiable, but simply as a fact, like the color of her eyes or the shape of her tusks. But love, she reminded herself firmly, was not the same as being loved in return. Adam's kindness did not mean he felt anything beyond friendly respect. And even if he did, what future could there be for an orc farrier's apprentice and a human coachmaster? Such pairings were not unheard of, but they were rare enough to draw stares and whispers. More importantly, what man would want a woman who could not walk across a room without pain, who would never be able to dance with him or hike through the mountains or do any of the 100 things that couples did together? She kept her feelings locked away and focused on her work. Master Torvin was beginning to talk about her journeyman trials, the tests she would need to pass to advance from apprentice to full craftswoman. If she passed, and if she could save enough money, She might one day have her own forge. That was a future she could plan for, something within her reach. Then, on a bright morning in late spring, Master Torvin called her into the small back room he used as an office. "I have had a letter," he said without preamble, holding up a folded sheet of paper sealed with wax. "From my cousin in Clearwater, up in the northern valleys. He is looking for a skilled apprentice to take over his forge. He is getting old, he has no children, and he wants to train someone to inherit the business." Kara's heart sank. "You are sending me away. I am giving you an opportunity." Torvin's voice was gentle. "Clearwater is a wealthy town. Lots of traffic through the mountain passes in summer. The forge there does good business, better than ours, and my cousin is prepared to advance you to journeyman status within the year if you prove yourself. You would have your own forge before you are 25. But my contract can be transferred with your consent." Torvin set the letter down on his cluttered desk. "I will not force you, Kara, but I think you should consider it seriously. You have learned everything I can teach you. It is time for you to move forward." Kara swallowed hard. Clearwater was 3 days' journey north, deep in the mountains. She would be far from Milford Crossing, far from the forge where she had spent her adolescence, far from Master Torvin, who had been like a second father to her, far from Adam Marsh, whose route did not extend that far north. And perhaps that was for the best. Perhaps it was time to stop listening for hoofbeats every time someone approached. Perhaps distance would help her forget the way her heart lifted whenever she saw Adam's tall figure leading a horse toward the forge. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked. 2 weeks. My cousin needs an answer by the end of the month." Kara nodded and left the office, returning to the forge where a set of iron hinges waited to be finished. She hammered the metal with more force than necessary, trying to pound her feelings into submission. She did not tell Adam about the offer when he came by 3 days later with a chestnut mare that needed new shoes. She simply did her work as always, accepting his quiet presence and his occasional comments about the spring weather. When he paid her and prepared to leave, he paused. "Are you well?" he asked. "You seem troubled." The observation caught her off guard. She was usually so careful to keep her feelings hidden. "I am fine. Just tired." Adam studied her for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling that he could see straight through her deflection, but he did not press. He simply touched his hat brim and left, and Kara felt the loss of his presence like a physical ache. That night, lying in her narrow bed in the room above the forge, she made her decision. She would accept the transfer to Clearwater. It was the practical choice, the smart choice. It offered her a future, security, her own forge, and the respect that came with being a master craftswoman. And it would remove her from the temptation to keep hoping for something that could never be. She told Master Torvin in the morning, and he nodded with satisfaction. "You are making the right choice, girl. I will write to my cousin today." The next week passed in a blur of preparations. Kara packed her few belongings, took inventory of her personal tools, and began teaching the new apprentice, a young orc boy from the next village, the basics of working the forge. Master Torvin arranged for her to travel north with a merchant caravan that would pass through Clearwater, and Kara booked passage for 2 weeks hence. She did not see Adam during that week. His schedule must have taken him up into the mountains, because his usual visits did not happen. It was better that way, Kara told herself. Better to slip away quietly than to have to explain her departure to him, to see polite indifference on his face when she told him she was leaving. But on the day before she was scheduled to depart, Adam rode into the forge yard leading 2 horses, both needing attention. Kara's heart squeezed at the sight of him, and she had to force herself to speak normally. "Good afternoon. What needs doing?" Adam dismounted and gestured to the horses. Both need shoeing. Thought I would have them done before the summer runs start in earnest. Kara nodded and led the first horse to the hitching post. She worked in silence, aware of Adam watching her as always. She had become so accustomed to his presence that the forge would feel empty without it. Clearwater would feel empty without it. When she finished the first horse and started on the second, Adam spoke. "You have been quiet lately, more than usual." Kara focused on trimming the hoof in her hands. "I have had things on my mind." "What things?" She could have deflected again, could have given some vague answer about forge business or apprentice trials. But perhaps he deserved to know. Perhaps it would be easier to leave if he understood why. "Master Torvin's cousin has offered me a position," she said, not looking up from her work. "In Clearwater. A good position with a path to my own forge within a year." The silence that followed felt heavy. When Adam finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "Clearwater is far north. 3 days' journey, maybe 4 in bad weather. When do you leave?" "Tomorrow." "There is a merchant caravan heading north at dawn." Kara finished the second horse and straightened, finally making herself meet Adam's eyes. His expression was unreadable, his jaw tight. "I see," he said. "And this is what you want. It is a good opportunity." She heard the defensiveness in her own voice again. "Master Torvin thinks I should take it." "That was not what I asked." Kara looked away. "What I want does not matter. This is the smart choice." "Why?" "Because I am an apprentice farrier with no prospects beyond eventually taking over Torvin's forge here, which will not happen for years. Because Clearwater offers me a chance to build something of my own. Because staying here would be foolish." "Foolish," Adam repeated, and something flickered in his eyes that might have been anger or hurt or both. "Why foolish?" "Because I love you, and you only see me as a convenient farrier. Because I cannot bear to keep hoping for something impossible. Because leaving is the only way I can protect what is left of my heart." But she could not say any of that, so she said nothing. Adam's hands flexed at his sides, and for a moment she thought he might argue. But then his shoulders dropped slightly, and he nodded once. "If it is what you want, then I wish you well." His voice was flat, and he turned to untie his horses. "What do I owe you?" Kara named the price, and Adam counted out the coins with hands that were not quite steady. He mounted without his usual grace and rode away without looking back, and Kara stood in the forge yard watching until he disappeared around the bend in the road. She told herself the tightness in her chest was relief. She had made the right choice. In a few months, she would barely remember Adam Marsh's quiet visits or the way his rare smiles made her feel like the sun had come out from behind clouds. That night, she barely slept. She lay awake listening to the wind in the eaves and trying not to think about brown eyes and calloused hands, and a voice that spoke her name like it mattered. Dawn came too soon. Kara dressed in her traveling clothes, a sturdy wool dress and her heavy cloak, and strapped her tool roll and pack to her back. Master Torvin walked with her to the crossroads, posting in where the merchant caravan was gathering, his hand heavy on her shoulder. "You will do well," he said gruffly. "My cousin is a good man. He will treat you fairly. Thank you," Kara's throat was tight, "for everything. For taking me on when no one else would, for teaching me for." "Bah," Torvin waved away her gratitude. "You earned your place. You have good hands and a good head. Do not forget that." The caravan master called for passengers to board the large coach that would carry them north. Kara hugged Master Torvin quickly, blinking back tears, and climbed into the coach. She found a seat by the window and settled her pack at her feet. The coach lurched into motion, and Milford Crossing began to recede behind them. Kara pressed her forehead against the cool glass and watched the familiar buildings disappear. The forge, the inn, the market square, all the places that had made up her world for the past 8 years. They had barely traveled a mile when the caravan master shouted something, and the coach jolted to a halt so suddenly that Kara was thrown forward against the seat in front of her. "What is happening?" asked the merchant sitting across from her, a stout human woman with 3 chins. The door to the coach was wrenched open, and Adam Marsh stood there, his chest heaving as though he had been running. His horse stood a few yards behind him, sides flecked with foam. "Kara Drummond," Adam said, his voice rough. "Get out of the coach." Kara stared at him. "What?" "Get out of the coach." He reached in and took her hand, his grip firm. "Please." She let him pull her out, too shocked to resist. The other passengers craned their necks to watch, openly curious. The caravan master rode back to see what the delay was about, his face thunderous. "Here now, what is the meaning of this? We are on schedule and she is not going." Adam still had not let go of Kara's hand. "Her contract is being terminated." "Her contract was transferred legally," the caravan master sputtered. "You cannot just—" "I spoke to Master Torvin this morning. He has agreed to void the transfer." Adam pulled a folded paper from inside his coat and handed it to the caravan master, who scanned it and scowled. "This is highly irregular, but legal." Adam's voice was steel. "Now, if you will excuse us, we are delaying your schedule." He tugged Kara away from the coach, and she stumbled after him, her mind reeling. The caravan master shouted something after them, but Adam ignored him, and a moment later the coach lurched back into motion, continuing north without her. Adam led her to his horse and only then released her hand. He did not look at her, his jaw set in a way that suggested he was barely keeping his emotions in check. "What just happened?" Kara asked, her voice faint. "You cannot go to Clearwater." "Why not?" "Adam, that was my future, my chance to—" "Your chance to run away." Now he did look at her, and his eyes were fierce. "From me," Kara's breath caught. "I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Adam took a step closer. "You think I have not noticed. You think I do not see the way you look at me when you think I am not watching. You think I have spent the past 6 months finding excuses to visit the forge because I particularly enjoy having my horses shod. You feel sorry for me," Kara said desperately. "That is all it is. Pity, because I am. If you say because you are lame, I swear I will kiss you right here in the middle of the road just to stop your mouth." Kara gaped at him. Adam ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up in all directions, and let out a frustrated breath. "I am not a man of words," he said. "My late wife used to complain about that, how I could go days without saying more than a dozen sentences. But I am going to try now, because I will not let you disappear thinking I do not care." He took both her hands in his, and his grip was warm and solid. "I have been alone for 3 years," he said. "After Margaret died, I thought that was it for me. One chance at love and it was gone. I did my work, kept my head down, got through the days. And then I met a stubborn orc girl with green skin and clever hands who could gentle a nervous horse with a word, and who made every piece she forged like it mattered. Who sat up on a stool and worked through pain without complaint because she took pride in her craft. Who had eyes like forest moss and a smile that appeared so rarely it felt like a gift when it did." Kara's vision blurred with tears. "Adam, I am not done," his voice gentled. "I know you think the limp makes you less somehow. I have seen the way you position yourself, the way you try to hide it. But Kara, when I look at you, I do not see a woman who is broken. I see a woman who is strong, who survived something that would have crushed others, who built a life and a skill despite having every reason to give up." "I cannot dance," Kara said, and hated how her voice cracked. "I cannot walk through the mountains or even across the village without hurting. What kind of life could we have? You would grow tired of my limitations, of having to slow down for me, of—" "Stop." Adam released one of her hands to cup her face, his palm rough against her cheek. "Do you think I care about dancing? I have not danced since my wedding. Do you think I need someone to hike mountains with me? I spend all day on a coach box or in a saddle. When I am not working, I want to sit by a fire with someone who makes me remember why life is worth living. But people will talk. An orc and a human it is. Let them talk." Adam's thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "I have spent 3 years not caring what people think. I am not going to start now." Kara wanted to believe him. Every fiber of her being ached to close the small distance between them and let herself fall into the hope he was offering. But years of protecting herself, of accepting that romance was for other people, did not dissolve easily. "What about children?" she asked. "I do not know if orcs and humans can even. If we can, wonderful. If we cannot, we will be content with each other." Adam's expression softened. "Kara, I am not offering you some perfect fairy tale. I am offering you a real life with a man who is too quiet and works too much, and who still grieves his first wife sometimes. But I am also offering you a man who will not let you go, who will not let you run away because you have convinced yourself you are not worthy of love, who sees you exactly as you are and wants you anyway. Anyway." Despite everything, Kara felt a smile tug at her lips. "That is your romantic declaration. I told you I am not good with words." But Adam was almost smiling too, the expression transforming his usually stern face. "I meant because of who you are, not anyway, because—" The last of Kara's resistance crumbled. She reached up and laid her hand over his where it still cupped her face. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "I never thought I would have this. Neither did I. We will figure it out together." "I am afraid," she admitted. "Afraid you will realize you made a mistake. Afraid I will not be enough. Then I will spend every day proving otherwise." Adam leaned his forehead against hers, and his breath was warm on her face. "Say you will stay. Say you will give us a chance." Kara closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, she let herself believe that she could be loved. Not despite her limp or her orc blood or her rough hands, but with all of those things as part of who she was. "I will stay," she said. "I will stay." Adam kissed her then, soft and tentative at first, as though he was afraid she might pull away. But Kara leaned into him, and the kiss deepened, becoming something warm and sure and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Adam's eyes held a light she had never seen before. "We should go back," he said. "Master Torvin will want to know his apprentice is not going to Clearwater after all." "What did you say to convince him to void the transfer?" Kara asked as Adam helped her onto his horse and then swung up behind her. "The truth. That I am in love with you, and that I will not lose you to my own cowardice." Adam settled her against his chest, one arm around her waist to keep her steady. "Also, I may have promised to commission a new gate for the forge yard and to pay for it in advance." "You bribed him," Kara said, torn between laughter and exasperation. "I incentivized him to see things my way." Adam nudged the horse into a walk back toward Milford Crossing. "There is a difference." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, Kara leaning back against Adam's solid warmth and feeling, for the first time in her life, like she was exactly where she belonged. The sun climbed higher in the sky, burning off the last of the morning mist, and birds sang in the trees lining the road. "What happens now?" Kara asked eventually. "I mean, practically speaking, I still have 3 years on my apprenticeship and you have your route to run. I have been thinking about that." Adam's voice rumbled in his chest and Kara could feel the vibration against her back. "The posting in at the crossroads needs a farrier. Old Harris, who ran the forge there, died last winter, and they have been sending horses to Torvin or hiring traveling farriers at inflated prices. What if we established a partnership forge there? You could serve the inn and the coach trade. I could help with the business side when I am not on the road, and we would be together more than apart. Kara twisted to look at him. A partnership forge, equal partners. Your skill, my capital. We would both have our names on the contract. Adam met her eyes steadily. I know you want your own forge, your independence. This way you would have it, or at least a share of it. But you know nothing about smithing. No, but I know horses and I know business. You would handle all the actual forging. I would handle the books, the contracts, the negotiations with customers. Adam's arm tightened around her waist. If you would rather wait and start your own forge on your own, I understand. I am not trying to take that dream away from you. But if you are willing to build something together. Yes, Kara did not even have to think about it. Yes, I want that. A forge of our own, together. Adam exhaled, and she realized he had been genuinely worried she might refuse. We will need Master Torvin's blessing to end your apprenticeship early. And we will need to negotiate with the posting inn's owner. But I think we can make it work. They arrived back at the forge to find Master Torvin waiting in the yard, his arms crossed, and a knowing look on his weathered face. When Adam helped Kara down from the horse, the old orc raised one bushy eyebrow. So, he said, I take it my apprentice will not be going to Clearwater after all. No, sir. Kara stepped forward, trying to look professional despite her surely obvious tear-stained face. But I want to thank you for voiding the transfer. I know it must have put you in an awkward position with your cousin. My cousin will understand. Torvin's gaze shifted to Adam. So what are your intentions toward my apprentice, Coach Master? To marry her, if she will have me, Adam said bluntly, and to establish a partnership forge at the crossroads posting in with Kara as the master smith. She is still an apprentice, Torvin pointed out. She has not passed her journeyman trials. Then we will wait to open the forge until she has. Adam's voice was firm. But I would like to begin negotiations with the posting inn and start making arrangements. Torvin looked at Kara. And you, is this what you want? Kara thought about Clearwater, about the forge that would have been hers eventually, about the safe, solitary future she had planned. Then she looked at Adam, at the man who had ridden after her coach to bring her back, and she knew with absolute certainty which future she wanted. Yes, she said. This is what I want. Then you have my blessing. Torvin smiled, an expression that made him look decades younger. And I will arrange for your journeyman trials to be conducted within the month. If you pass, your apprenticeship will be concluded and you will be free to establish your own forge. Within the month, Kara's stomach lurched with nervousness. That soon, you are ready. You have been ready for 6 months. I was only waiting for you to believe it. Torvin clapped her on the shoulder. Now I believe you two have plans to make. Go on, get out of my forge. I have work to do even if you do not. Kara hugged him impulsively, and after a moment of surprise, the old orc hugged her back. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Just make sure you name the forge something sensible, Torvin said gruffly as he released her. None of this flowery nonsense. Good honest name for good honest work. Adam extended his hand and Torvin shook it firmly. I will take care of her, Adam said. See that you do, and Coach Master, that gate you promised, I want it by autumn. You will have it by summer's end, Adam agreed. They left Torvin to his work and walked together through the village toward the crossroads. Kara's hip was aching from the morning's upheaval, and without thinking, Adam adjusted his pace to match hers, offering his arm for support when the road grew uneven. The gesture made her throat tight with emotion. I spoke to the posting inn's owner last week, Adam said as they walked. Before I knew about Clearwater, but after I realized I needed to do something to keep you close. The old forge building is still standing, just in need of some repairs. He is willing to lease it to us for a fair price, with an option to buy after 5 years. You were planning this already. Kara looked at him in wonder. I was trying to build a future where I could see you more than once a week. Adam's ears reddened slightly. I did not know how to court you properly. I am out of practice, and I was never particularly good at it to begin with. But I knew I wanted you in my life, and I was willing to rearrange my entire world to make that possible. They reached the posting inn, a sprawling 2-story building with a large stable and several outbuildings. The old forge sat at the edge of the property, a stone structure with a sound roof but boarded-up windows. Adam produced a key and unlocked the door, pushing it open to reveal a dusty but spacious interior. The forge itself was larger than Torvin's, with room for 2 workstations and a generous amount of storage. The bellows were ancient but looked functional, and the anvil, though rusty, was a beautiful piece of old iron that would clean up well. Kara walked slowly through the space, her mind already filling with possibilities. She could set up her primary workstation near the best light from the window. They could build additional shelving along that wall for storing horseshoes and tools. The back area could be partitioned off into a small office where Adam could handle the business accounts. "What do you think?" Adam asked from the doorway. Kara turned to him, and she could not keep the smile off her face. "I think it is perfect. I think we could make something wonderful here. We will." Adam crossed the dusty floor to take her hands. "And not just the forge. A life, Kara, a real life together." "I am still afraid," she admitted. "I do not know how to be someone's wife or partner. I have spent so long believing I would be alone. Then we will learn together." Adam raised one of her hands to his lips and kissed her scarred knuckles. "I am afraid too. Afraid of dishonoring Margaret's memory, afraid of failing you, afraid I am too old and set in my ways to make you happy. But I would rather be afraid and with you than safe and alone." Kara reached up with her free hand and touched his face, tracing the lines that grief and weather had etched there. "I love you," she said, the words feeling both strange and right on her tongue. "I have loved you for months, and I was so sure it was hopeless. Not hopeless." Adam turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. "Never hopeless. Just slow because I am a fool who almost let you slip away." They stood together in the dusty forge, holding each other as the afternoon sun slanted through the gaps in the boarded windows, and Kara felt something settle deep in her chest. This was real. This was happening. She was not dreaming, and she was not going to wake up to find herself alone again. Over the next month, life became a whirlwind of activity. Kara threw herself into preparing for her journeyman trials, practicing the techniques that would be tested and reviewing the theoretical knowledge she would need to demonstrate. Master Torvin drilled her relentlessly, but with an undercurrent of pride that kept her going even when exhaustion made her hands shake. Meanwhile, Adam coordinated with the posting inn's owner, finalizing the lease on the forge and beginning repairs on the building. He hired carpenters to fix the windows and reinforce the roof, and he ordered supplies from a metalwork supplier in the capital. He did all of this while still running his coach route, which meant he was often gone for days at a time. But whenever he returned, he came straight to find Kara, and the sight of him striding into Torvin's forge yard never failed to make her heart lift. They stole moments together whenever they could, walking in the evening after Kara finished work, sharing meals at the inn, sitting by the river and talking about their plans for the forge and for their future. The journeyman trials were held on a bright day in early summer, presided over by a master smith from the regional guild. Kara had to demonstrate her ability to work with various metals, to shoe a difficult horse, to repair a complex piece of tack, and to answer detailed questions about metalworking theory. The whole process took most of the day, and by the end of it, Kara's hip was screaming and her hands were blistered despite her calluses. But when the master smith conferred with Master Torvin and then turned to her with a smile, announcing that she had passed with distinction, the pain faded into insignificance. She was no longer an apprentice. She was a journeyman smith, qualified to work independently and to open her own forge. Adam, who had waited at the inn all day, swept her into his arms when she brought him the news, spinning her in a circle despite her startled yelp. When he set her down, he was grinning, an expression so rare and joyful that it transformed his whole face. "I am so proud of you," he said, and kissed her soundly in front of half the village. Kara did not even care who saw. She kissed him back, pouring all her happiness and relief and love into the gesture, and the small crowd that had gathered to hear the trial results applauded and cheered. The next few weeks were spent preparing the forge for opening. Kara and Adam worked side by side, scrubbing away years of dust and grime, testing and repairing equipment, organizing supplies. Adam had a sign commissioned, a beautiful carved piece that read Marsh and Drummond, farriers and smiths in elegant lettering. When Kara saw it, she had to blink back tears. Her name, right there next to his. Equal partners, just as he had promised. They held a small opening ceremony in midsummer, with Master Torvin officiating and most of the village turning out to celebrate. The posting inn's owner gave a speech about how pleased he was to have a proper forge on the premises again, and several coach drivers and travelers immediately lined up to commission work. That evening, after the last customer had left and they had banked the fires for the night, Adam produced a small wooden box from his pocket. "I wanted to give you this," he said, opening the box to reveal a ring. It was not gold or silver but iron, beautifully forged and etched with a pattern of interlocking curves. "I made it myself. Well, I tried. The blacksmith in the next town helped when it became clear I was hopeless, but I did most of the work." Kara took the ring with trembling fingers. It was slightly irregular, the marks of amateur work visible in the uneven etching, but it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen precisely because of those imperfections. "Kara Drummond," Adam said, and his voice was steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out as barely a whisper, and Kara had to clear her throat and try again. "Yes, absolutely yes." Adam slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promises, and Kara thought that she had never been happier in her entire life. They were married in the autumn, in a simple ceremony at the village church. Master Torvin gave Kara away, and the posting inn staff stood as witnesses. Kara wore a dress of deep green wool that brought out the color of her skin, and Adam wore his best clothes, looking handsome and nervous and so full of love that Kara could hardly breathe. When the priest asked if they would pledge themselves to each other, for better or worse in sickness and in health, for as long as they both lived, Kara's voice rang out clear and certain. "I will." And when Adam repeated the same vows, his hand warm and steady around hers, Kara knew with absolute certainty that he meant every word. The harvest festival that year was the first time Kara had ever attended as anything other than an observer sitting on the sidelines. Adam led her into the dancing, one arm around her waist to support her, and they swayed together to the music. She could not manage the quick steps or the spins that the other dancers performed, but Adam did not seem to care. He held her close and moved slowly, and when she looked up at him, he was smiling down at her as though she was the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For refusing to let me go. For seeing me when I thought I was invisible. For making me believe I could have this." Adam bent his head and kissed her forehead. "Thank you for giving me a reason to hope again, for bringing light back into my life, for being exactly who you are." The forge thrived over the following months. Word spread about the quality of their work, and soon they had customers coming from villages up and down the mountain roads. Adam's knowledge of the coach trade brought in steady business from travelers, and Kara's skill earned them a reputation for excellence. They hired an apprentice the next spring, a quiet human girl named Eliza who proved to have a natural talent for metalwork. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Adam ran his coach route, but he had adjusted his schedule so he was home more often than not. When he was gone, Kara worked the forge, teaching Eliza and taking on commissions. When he was home, they worked together, Adam handling customers and accounts while Kara shaped metal into beauty and utility. They built a small house next to the forge, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs. Kara planted a garden, and Adam built furniture in his spare time, and they filled the space with their life together. Slowly, carefully, Kara learned how to be part of a partnership, how to let someone see her at her weakest and trust they would not flinch away. And Adam, who had spent 3 years locked in grief, learned how to laugh again, how to plan for a future instead of just enduring the present. On a cold winter evening 2 years after their marriage, Kara sat by the fire mending a piece of harness while Adam read through a stack of invoices. Snow fell softly outside their window, muffling the world in white silence. "Adam," Kara said, setting down her work, "I have something to tell you." He looked up immediately, hearing something in her tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine." Kara twisted the iron ring on her finger, nervous despite her joy. "I am pregnant." Adam went very still. Then he set down the invoices with exaggerated care, crossed the room in 3 long strides, and pulled Kara into his arms. "Are you certain?" His voice was rough with emotion. "The midwife confirmed it yesterday. It is early yet, only a couple of months, but yes, we are going to have a child." Adam held her for a long moment, his face pressed into her hair. When he finally pulled back, there were tears on his face. "I did not think I would have this again," he said. "Another chance at being a father. I thought that door had closed." "Are you happy?" Kara asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know this will change things, and if you—" "Happy?" Adam laughed, the sound caught between joy and tears. "Kara, I am terrified and amazed and so grateful I do not have words for it. Of course I am happy." He kissed her then, pouring everything he could not articulate into the gesture, and Kara felt the last tiny piece of doubt that she had carried for so long finally dissolve. She was loved. She was chosen. She was exactly where she belonged. Their daughter was born in early autumn, a squalling, red-faced infant with her mother's green-tinted skin and her father's brown eyes. They named her Lena, after Adam's grandmother, and she immediately became the center of their world. Kara had worried during the pregnancy that she would not be able to care for a child properly with her bad leg, but she adapted the same way she had adapted to everything else in her life. She learned to carry Lena in a sling that distributed the weight evenly. She and Adam set up a cradle in the forge workshop so the baby could nap nearby while Kara worked. Eliza, who had become like a younger sister to Kara, doted on the child and eagerly volunteered to watch her whenever needed. Lena grew up surrounded by the sounds of the forge, the ring of hammer on anvil serving as a lullaby. She took her first steps in the workshop, clutching at her mother's leather apron for balance. She learned her letters from the signs in the forge and her numbers from watching her father tally accounts. And she never once saw her mother's limp as something shameful or limiting. To Lena, it was simply one of the many things that made her mother who she was, like her green skin or her skill with metal or the way she hummed while she worked. On Lena's 3rd birthday, The family gathered in the yard behind their house for a small celebration. Master Torvin had closed his forge for the day to attend, and Eliza had baked a cake that was more enthusiasm than skill. The posting-in staff came by with gifts, and several of Adam's fellow coach drivers stopped in between runs. As the sun began to set and the guests departed, Kara found herself standing with Adam, watching Lena chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. Their daughter's laughter rang out bright and clear, a sound of pure joy. "You remember," Kara said softly, "when I tried to leave for Clearwater? When I was so certain that staying was foolish." "I remember chasing down your coach like a lunatic," Adam replied, sliding his arm around her waist. "My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I kept thinking, what if I am too late? What if she will not listen?" "I am glad you were a lunatic." Kara leaned into his side, fitting against him as naturally as breathing. "I am glad you refused to let me go. I would have followed you all the way to Clearwater if necessary." Adam pressed a kiss to her temple. "I would have followed you anywhere." "I know." Kara turned in his arms to face him. "You showed me that I was worth fighting for, worth choosing. I spent so long believing that love was for other people, for those who were whole and graceful and human. You taught me that I was wrong. You were always whole." Adam's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. "You just needed someone to help you see it." Lena ran over to them, her small hands cupping a captured firefly. "Mama, Papa, look, I caught one." "So you did." Kara bent down, ignoring the familiar twinge in her hip. "What are you going to do with it?" Lena considered for a moment, then carefully opened her hands and let the firefly go. They all watched as it spiraled up into the darkening sky, its light blinking on and off like a tiny star. "I set it free," Lena announced, "so it can find its family." "That was very kind of you," Adam said, ruffling his daughter's dark hair. "I am always kind," Lena said with the absolute certainty of a 3-year-old. Then she yawned hugely and held up her arms. "Tired now." Adam scooped her up, and Lena immediately nestled against his shoulder, her eyes already drooping closed. The three of them went inside together, and Kara locked the door behind them while Adam carried Lena up to the loft where her small bed waited. Later, after Lena was asleep and the house was quiet, Kara and Adam sat together by the fire. Adam was working on a piece of wood carving, slowly shaping it into a toy horse for Lena. Kara was sketching designs for a new set of ornamental hinges a customer had commissioned. "Do you ever wonder," Kara asked, breaking the comfortable silence, "what your life would have been like if you had never come to the forge that first day?" Adam set down his carving and considered. "Sometimes, but I cannot imagine it, not really. It would be like trying to imagine a world without sunlight. Everything good in my life now traces back to that decision to have my horses shod by the new apprentice instead of waiting for Master Torvin. I used to think," Kara said slowly, "that my limp was the defining thing about me. That it made me less than others, unworthy of being loved. But now I see it differently. It is part of my story, part of what shaped me, but it does not define my worth." "No," Adam agreed. "What defines you is your courage, your skill, your kindness. The way you never give up, even when things are hard. The way you love our daughter and the way you love me." Kara set aside her sketches and moved to sit beside him on the bench. Adam put his arm around her, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I could have this," she whispered. "A home, a family, a partner who sees me as I am. I thought those things were for other people. They were always meant to be yours too." Adam's voice was gentle. "You just had to believe it." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters and sending a flurry of autumn leaves skittering across the yard. Inside, the fire crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Upstairs, Lena murmured something in her sleep, a fragment of a child's dream. Kara closed her eyes and breathed in the scent of wood smoke and leather, and the soap Adam used, all the small details that added up to home. She thought about the girl she had been, the one who limped through the forge yard convinced that she would always be alone. If she could go back and tell that girl what the future held, would she believe it? Probably not. That girl had been too certain of her unworthiness, too convinced that her limitations made her unlovable. It had taken Adam's stubborn refusal to accept her self-imposed isolation to crack open that certainty and let the light in. "Thank you," Kara said again, because the words never felt like enough, but they were all she had. "For what?" Adam asked, though by now he knew what she meant. "For refusing to let me go, for proving that love was for me too." Adam turned and kissed her, slow and deep and sweet, a kiss that spoke of years together and years yet to come. When they finally parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Always," he said, "I will always choose you. Every day for the rest of my life." And in that moment, in their small house beside the forge they had built together, with their daughter sleeping peacefully upstairs and the whole future stretching out before them, Kara believed him. Not because she had to force herself to, not because she was trying to convince herself, but because it was simply true. Love had found her after all, not in spite of who she was, but because of it. And she would spend the rest of her life grateful for the man who had seen her worth, even when she could not see it herself, who had chased down her coach and refused to let her run away from the happiness she deserved. The fire burned low, and eventually they banked it for the night and climbed the stairs to their bed. Kara checked on Lena one more time, adjusting the blanket that had been kicked off and smoothing back the dark hair from her daughter's forehead. Adam stood in the doorway watching, and when Kara turned to him, the love in his eyes was so clear and strong it made her breath catch. They went to their own room, and Adam helped Kara undress, his hands gentle on the fastenings of her dress. She did the same for him, and they climbed into bed together, fitting their bodies together with the easy familiarity of long practice. "I love you," Kara whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Adam replied, his arm tightening around her. "Sleep now. Tomorrow is another day of work." Kara smiled against his chest and let herself drift into sleep, secure in the knowledge that she would wake up to find him still beside her, that this was not a dream or a temporary gift, but her life, her future, her happily ever after. Years passed in the way that years do when life is good. The forge continued to prosper, gaining renown throughout the region for the quality of its work. Eliza eventually completed her own journeyman trials and became a full partner in the business, allowing Kara to take on more complex artistic commissions, while Eliza handled the day-to-day horseshoeing and repairs. Lena grew into a bright, curious child who showed signs of inheriting both her mother's craftsmanship and her father's business sense. She learned to work the bellows and to shape simple pieces under Kara's patient instruction. She also learned to read and write and do figures, often sitting in the forge office with Adam while he worked on the accounts. On Lena's 10th birthday, Adam announced at breakfast that he had decided to retire from running the coach route. He was over 50 now, and the long days on the road were growing harder on his body. "But what will you do?" Lena asked, her eyes wide. "If you are not a coach master anymore." "I will be a full-time forge partner," Adam said, reaching across the table to squeeze Kara's hand. "Your mother and Eliza have been doing most of the work for years. It is time I contributed more than just bookkeeping." "But you do not know how to forge," Lena pointed out with a child's directness. "Then your mother will teach me. I managed to make a ring once." "Perhaps I can learn to make other things." Kara laughed at the memory of that ring, which she still wore every day despite having the means now to replace it with something finer. You were terrible at it. The blacksmith in the next town took pity on you. Exactly. I have nowhere to go but up. Adam's eyes sparkled with humor. Besides, I have always wanted to learn. I just never had the time. So Adam became a forge apprentice at the age of 52, and it turned out he had been right about having nowhere to go but up. He would never have Kara's instinctive understanding of metal or Eliza's delicate touch with fine work, but he developed a solid competence with simpler pieces. More importantly, he brought organizational skills and business acumen that allowed the forge to take on larger contracts and expand into new markets. The house next to the forge was expanded to accommodate their growing comfort. Kara's hip, which had troubled her more as she aged, was eased by a cane that Adam carved for her, the handle shaped like a horse's head. She used it without shame now, having long since stopped trying to hide her limitations. Master Torvin lived to see Lena's 15th birthday, before passing peacefully in his sleep one winter night. His funeral was attended by every orc and half the humans in the region, a testament to the lives he had touched and the apprentices he had trained. Kara spoke at the service, her voice steady as she talked about the old orc who had given a crippled orphan girl a chance when no one else would. After Torvin's death, Kara and Adam decided to buy his old forge and incorporate it into their business. They kept the name Marsh and Drummond, but underneath they added Torvin's legacy, ensuring that the old master's name would continue to be honored. Lena, at 16, announced her intention to become a journeyman smith like her mother. She was talented and dedicated, though she also had a streak of her father's stubbornness that sometimes made teaching her a challenge. But Kara was patient, remembering her own apprenticeship and all the times Master Torvin had guided her through frustration to mastery. On a spring evening when Lena was 17, the family sat together on the porch of their house, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Lena was working on a sketch for a decorative gate she wanted to attempt, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Adam was reading by the fading light, his spectacles perched on his nose, and Kara sat with her cane across her lap, simply enjoying the peace of the moment. "Mama," Lena said suddenly, looking up from her sketch, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever wish things had been different? That you had not been hurt when you were little, that you did not have to deal with your leg?" Kara considered the question carefully. Once, she would have answered yes without hesitation. She would have wished away the pain and the limp and all the years of believing herself unworthy of love. "No," she said finally, "I would not change it." Lena looked surprised. "Really? But it must be so hard sometimes." "It is," Kara acknowledged. "There are days when the pain is bad, when I am frustrated by what I cannot do, but if I had not been hurt, I might have ended up somewhere else entirely. I might never have become a farrier. I might never have met your father. I certainly would not have learned the lessons I learned about worth and strength and love." She reached over and took Adam's hand, and he squeezed her fingers gently. "Everything that happened made me who I am," Kara continued. "The good and the bad, the pain and the joy, and I like who I am now. I like the life I have built. So no, I would not change it, because changing it would mean risking all of this." Lena nodded slowly, processing this. "That makes sense." "I think you are very brave, Mama." "Not brave," Kara corrected gently. "Just human." "Well, orc, you know what I mean. I am just someone who learned to live with what I was given and to find joy despite the hard parts. And who found someone who refused to let her give up on that joy," Adam added, his voice warm with affection. As the last light faded from the sky and stars began to appear overhead, Kara thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. the frightened child who had lost her parents and her mobility in one terrible accident. The lonely apprentice who had convinced herself that love was for other people. The woman who had tried to run away to Clearwater rather than risk hoping for something she thought she could never have. And the woman she was now, sitting on her porch with her husband and daughter, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived and deeply loved. She had been wrong all those years ago. Love had not been for other people. It had been for her too, waiting patiently for her to be ready to accept it. And when she had tried to run from it, it had chased her down and refused to let her go. That was the greatest gift Adam had ever given her. Not the forge or the house or the material comforts of their life together, but the simple, stubborn insistence that she was worth fighting for. That she was worth choosing. That her worth was not diminished by her limp or her scars or any of the other things she had once thought made her less than whole. He had refused to let her go, and in doing so, he had set her free. "What are you thinking about?" Adam asked, noticing her pensive expression. "About how lucky I am," Kara said simply. "About how wrong I was to think I did not deserve this." "You deserve everything good in this world," Adam said. And after more than 20 years together, his voice still held the same conviction it had that day on the road when he had pulled her out of the coach. Lena, who had been listening to this exchange with interest, set down her sketch and came over to hug both her parents. "I love you both," she said. "Thank you for being my parents. Thank you for showing me what love looks like." Kara held her daughter close, this miracle child she had never thought she would have, and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. For Adam, who had seen her when she thought herself invisible. For Lena, who had been born from a love Kara had never dared to hope for. For the forge and the work and the life they had built together, one day and one choice at a time. The stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, and the mountains stood dark and solid against the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird called, its song echoing across the valley. The forge, banked for the night, radiated gentle warmth from its stones. And in that moment, surrounded by the people she loved most in the world, Kara Drummond understood with perfect clarity that she had found her place. Not despite who she was, but because of it. Not in spite of her journey, but because of where it had led her. She had believed love was for others, until one man had refused to let her go. And in not letting go, he had given her everything. The end.